Our sourdough starter serves our family a lot during the week. Like, I just keep her out on the counter all the time, and she gets fed multiple times a day, and she's always being used. Other friends of mine, they've named their starters, and I need to think of a name for mine. So if you have a good name for her, there she is. You can comment it down below. So that meal that you saw in the last clip, that was just a standard sourdough loaf that I make pretty often, and I just shaped it into a nice buell and served it with soup, and that was Monday night. And then Tuesday, I am getting things ready to make sourdough flatbreads. These sourdough flatbreads we make very often. They're one of our favorite sourdough things to make, and they're so easy, they're so fast. I just make everything in the morning, I mix it all together, and then I just let it sit on the counter. This is a Farmhouse on Boone recipe, and it's just 2 cups of flour, a cup of starter, half a cup of milk, and a teaspoon of salt. And it's literally so easy, and you just mix it all together, and you can let it have a shorter fermentation, but I like for mine to have a longer fermentation, so I try to make it in the morning and then just let it sit out on the counter until later in the evening when it's time for dinner, and then I'll begin the process of shaping it, and it not bubbles up, but it gets nice and fluffy and soft, as you can see here. It's just so yummy. It's one of our favorites for sure. And right after I got this dough going, I fed my starter again, because you'll see here later that I'm going to need the starter again for tomorrow night's dinner. I'm going to make some biscuits next, and so I knew that it needed to be fed, so I went ahead and tried to do that. So now it's evening time, and I'm going to go ahead and get this dough rolled out and shaped into the flatbread shapes. I don't really measure anything, I just cut it, and I cut it into 8 equal pieces, I'm pretty sure is what I do, and that's what the recipe calls for. And then you just flatten them down, and they're so yummy. You stick them into a cast iron skillet with a bit of olive oil on the bottom, and they fluff up, and they're just so airy, and they're so delicious. So I highly recommend this recipe for sure. Like I said, this recipe is over on farmhouseonboone.com, and I use so many of her recipes, and I love them so much. Okay, now it's Wednesday morning, and I am just gonna go ahead and get some biscuit dough started. Tonight we are having some friends over, and I've made this recipe once before. This is another Farmhouse on Boone recipe. It's chicken pot pie, and she uses the sourdough biscuits on top. And this sourdough biscuit recipe I have used several times before, and it is so good. And it's that's what you put on the top of this chicken pot pie recipe. So I'm just getting these started the morning of, so that they can sit and ferment all day, and then they will be added to the pot pie at the end of the night when I go to make dinner. This recipe is a little bit more involved, and it takes a little bit more time to follow through and put together, but it is really delicious. And sometimes it's fun to have a meal that takes a little bit more time and a little bit more effort. It feels creative, and if you're needing to get out of a cooking rut, it's fun to be able to try a new recipe and start something new. And this recipe feeds a lot of people, and it's so hearty and it's so delicious. So I'm just getting my starter fed again, and then here's some clips of what the pot pie looked like. I forgot to video the process of actually making it, but it was really good. So now it's Thursday, and I am just getting some normal sourdough bread going. Now this is the recipe you saw at the beginning of the video. This is the one that I've been able to make so many times that I can just whip it out. I don't have to look at a recipe, it's just memorized. And that really helps in your bread making. If you have a recipe memorized and it doesn't really take any mental thought, you just kind of throw it together. That's really, really helpful when you are trying to make bread for your family regularly. So I'm just getting this going before I run some errands, and it just sits and sponges for about an hour. And then when I got home, that's when you would kind of knead it just a little bit. You can see it's a pretty sticky dough. I try not to add any extra flour to it if I don't have to. But this recipe is just 3 cups of flour, 1.5 cups of warm water, a tablespoon of honey, 2 teaspoons of salt, and a cup of starter. And I let this ferment all day. Like, I start the dough in the morning, I let it ferment all day, and then I put it in the fridge overnight and let it ferment a little longer overnight in the fridge. And then the next morning is when I get up and I get it shaped into a loaf, which I don't try super hard at. I kind of just get it kind of loaf shaped and pop it in the loaf pan. And it bakes at 375 for 45 plus minutes. So this is kind of my routine on my morning of bread making morning. This is the bread recipe that I do a bunch of different things with. In the beginning of the video, like you saw, I shaped it into a buell and scored it, and just, it's really fun to do that if you're having a nice dinner and you want to have bread along with your dinner. I like to have it for that. And then just for, during the week, it's a really nice sandwich loaf, and it works for both of those, I found, so that's nice. Now it's Friday, and I am getting some more flatbreads going because we're having some soup bone meat. I put it in the crock pot and had that cooking this day, and then I was just thinking we could eat the soup bone meat on top of the flatbreads. So this is just that same flatbread recipe. I'm getting that going again. I'm not going to go into detail because you've already seen that once. Like I said, this is one of our most favorites because it is so easy and so delicious. So I fed my starter right after I made that sourdough flatbread dough that morning. Now it's later in the evening, and I'm going to get some cinnamon roll dough ready for tomorrow morning on Saturday to have cinnamon rolls. This is yet another Farmhouse on Boone recipe. Basically, all of the sourdough recipes I follow are from Farmhouse on Boone. If any other people, I do like Sarah Teresa's sourdough recipes, but most of the time I find myself using Farmhouse on Boone recipes because they're pretty simple to follow and they are delicious. And once you kind of find a recipe style that you like, it's just nice to stick with it. So she is one of my favorites. So this is yet another recipe from her. This is her sourdough cinnamon rolls, and the dough consistency is never quite like I want it to be. I don't have a stand mixer, so I always have to mix stuff by hand, and that's the only downfall of a lot of her recipes. She does a lot of them, most of them, in her stand mixer, so I can never get the consistency quite right, but it always works out, and everything is always still delicious. So the next morning, it's now Saturday, and I'm just getting these rolled out and made. I'm watching a little bit of YouTube in the background. It's pretty early in the morning still, so I'm just getting these made before the family wakes up, and it was very relaxing and very enjoyable to do so. one, just to kind of round out and end this video, this is later on Saturday afternoon or later morning, and I'm getting some sourdough, just that normal loaf that I showed you earlier in the video. I'm getting that going so it can be ready tomorrow, Sunday, because it's potluck at church, potluck Sunday. And this is most of the time what I just bring a loaf of sourdough. And it's just kind of my go-to. Maybe I'll branch out one of these days. So anyways, I'm just getting that dough going. I let it ferment throughout the day, put it in the fridge overnight, Saturday night, and then get up Sunday morning and bake it. And that way it's nice and fresh at church during potluck. So thanks so much for watching this video, guys. I'm just so thankful for everyone who is here watching my videos and who has subscribed, and it's just very, very helpful for me, and it's very exciting to see where this YouTube channel is going. So if you're new here or if you've been here for a while, thank you so much for supporting me and my channel. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. See ya.